Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Blessings in the name of the Most High. We're glad you're able to join us this morning for some of our earliest episodes of Scripture and Eggs. We're going to be doing this every morning. So on your way out of the door, grab a quick spiritual pick-me-up as you eat your breakfast on the way out the door and head toward your day. We've been talking about these last couple of days on the subject of let us be wise. And so I want to continue at least another day today on that same vein. We've been talking about let us be wise, and in particular, as it relates to the subject of our confrontation, the confrontations that we have as black people with law enforcement and the justice system. I want to kind of come today from a passage in the book of Romans, chapter 16. Romans chapter 16, which is a letter that was written to the believers in Rome. And in verse 28, I believe it is, it says, "Now I beseech you, brethren, to mark them among you which cause divisions and offenses, contrary to the teachings which you have learned, and avoid them." Mark them which cause divisions and offenses, contrary to the teachings that you have learned, and avoid them. Now, in that letter, he's referring to the teachings regarding the life of Messiah, Yahushua HaMashiach. That's the teaching that he's talking about. But I want to kind of bring into focus in regards to this conversation the lessons and teachings that we can learn from history. And I want to beseech you, brethren, to mark them which are among us that cause divisions and offenses, contrary to the lessons that we should have learned from the past, from our history. In the first century of this common era, the Emperor Julius Caesar is credited with the phrase divide et imperia. Divide et imperia means to divide and to rule, where we get the phrase divide and conquer. He said that, supposedly, allegedly, in relationship to the effort to defeat the Roman enemies in Western Europe called the Gauls, which is now modern-day France. At the same time, during the same period in Roman history, was also when the temple of the Yahudim, the Jews, fell. So Rome was in an expansion mode to divide and conquer a multitude of nations. And one of those nations was the nation of the Yahudim, of Judea, of the Jews, the so-called, what we call Jews, which is not a correct term, but that's a subject for a later time. But as you know, these people were not Romans. They were not Europeans. These are people of color. These are black folks, the Yahudim. And in the tactic divide and conquer, he was able to destroy their temple and from that day to this day, disrupt the flow and energy and spirituality and religious unity of that nation and their covenant with the Most High from that day to now. In the late 16th century, King George III sent a delegation of people into Africa because an African emperor there by the name of Shaka Ka Sinzan Gakona. Shaka Ka Sinzan Gakona, whom you may know as Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu had united the tribes and nations of Africa under his military rule in such a powerful way that the mighty English Empire was afraid to continue colonization in Africa. They were afraid of the Zulu nation. And so rather than to engage the Zulu nation in a head-to-head war, which they were hopelessly outnumbered, even though they had superior technology and weapons and so forth and so on, they decided to send this delegation into the nation for the purpose of disrupting Shaka's government from the inside and bring down the empire from the inside. Divide et imperia, to divide and to conquer. Now let's bring it on up into the modern era. In the 50s and 60s, during what is known as the Civil Rights era, some of our great leaders, and even prior to then, Frederick Douglass, Marcus Garvey, on up to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, had begun to unite the African Americans in such a powerful way that the government began to lose its grip and control socioeconomically over African Americans. They had built their own prosperous cities. They had established their own industry. They had built what was called Black Wall Street in Tulsa. And, it was only natural because coming out of the slave era, where black folks had been doing all of the work, they were the only ones, primarily with industrialized skill. We were the carpenters, the electricians, the plumbers, the master builders. And all of these things, we were the chefs. We were the bakers. We were the candlestick makers, the blacksmiths, the silversmiths. And so these times had began to see, in opposition to great discrimination, a rise in the unity of the African American community by way of politics, by way of religion, by way of economics, in so many ways. And so the government then, rather than engaging in another civil war, decided to use the same tactic which has been used for centuries by infiltrating these movements, creating division by way of assassinations, and insurgencies within these movements. And I'm going to tell you right now that black people haven't been the same since the assassination of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. We haven't been united since. And so here we are today, still socioeconomically enslaved to a elite white supremacist system, because we have failed to mark them, which cause divisions and offenses that are contrary to the lessons that we should have learned from the past. There are lessons that that from the past that we need to return to, and one of the greatest lessons that we need to return to is there is strength in our unity. Listen, one of the brothers said it. One of the brothers said it very powerfully. When you are in a confrontation with our government and with our judicial system, and in particular, young black brother, when you are in a confrontation with a law enforcement officer, he does not care. He is not asking you if you are Christian, if you are Muslim, if you are Hindu, if you are a high school dropout or a college graduate. He's not asking you what position in the community you hold. What he is seeing is the fact that you are black. And if the injustice, the socio-economic injustice of the system and the government is something that we can unite around. We haven't been able to unite around religion. We haven't been able to unite around ourselves economically. We haven't been able to unite around Pan-Africanism. You know, there are brothers out there who are trying to unite us around Pan-Africanism. That hasn't worked. But if the socio-economic justice can be used as a rallying cry to bring us together, then so be it. We need to do that, because the lessons of the past have taught us that we need to unite around something. This is the only way to keep the wolves at bay. And so we need to pay more attention to the slogans that are out there. You know, I don't even mind the slogan Black Lives Matter, because there is no, you know, religious or any other kind of social status specificity to that. Just Black Lives. Buy black. Putting our money in black banks and all these kinds of things. We need to unite ourselves around our agreement concerning the injustice of our socio-economic system. So let's continue to do that. We're almost out of time. Let's keep one another in prayer again and remind each other that we are not alone. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow for Scripture and Eggs. You all have a great day.